The colony world of Vera had once been a place of hope. It was not a great capital, not a center of politics or wealth. It was a simple world, filled with farmers, teachers, workers, and children. Green fields stretched wide, rivers sparkled under twin suns, and cities rose with laughter and music. People dreamed of building a future there, quiet, peaceful, and free from the struggles of the larger galaxy. But that dream had been shattered. When the Zarn Empire came, they came without warning. Their fleets appeared in the skies like a plague of shadows. At first, the colonists did not believe it. Vera was small, unimportant. They had no riches, no weapons worth stealing. Why would an empire care about them? But the truth was cruel. The Zarn wanted to make an example. They ruled through fear. And what better way to spread fear than to destroy a weak world while the whole galaxy watched and did nothing? The first bombardments fell like thunder. Towers collapsed, fields burned, and entire districts vanished in fire. The ground shook with each strike, and the skies glowed red with falling debris. Families ran through smoke and ash, carrying children in their arms, searching for places to hide. The defenders of Vera tried. They fought with outdated ships, rusty weapons, and courage that outweighed their numbers. Their small fleet rose into the black void to meet the invaders. Brave men and women took their seats knowing they might never return. But courage was not enough. The Zarn ships were larger, faster, stronger. In the first battle, most of Vera's fleet was torn apart. Screams echoed over the comms as ships broke in half, venting lives into the cold darkness. What little remained retreated, broken but not destroyed. Those who survived swore they would fight again, even if all hope was lost. Weeks turned into months. The colony fell into silence. People built bunkers underground, far from the burning ruins of their homes. They ate whatever they could find, rationing water, praying their children would see another sunrise. The sound of footsteps above Zarn patrols reminded them they were no longer free. Every day the survivors sent distress calls. Across the stars their messages carried the same desperate words. "This is Vera. We are under attack. We need help, please. Anyone." But no help came. The Galactic Council, made of powerful species and empires, debated in their grand halls. Some called Vera a tragedy. Some called it a distraction. Some simply turned their eyes away. None sent aid. The people of Vera felt the weight of betrayal. They had joined the galaxy, believing in unity. They had paid their taxes, sent their young to fight in wars not their own. And when it was their turn, when their children cried in the night, no one came. Commander Selai, leader of what little defense remained, carried that weight more than anyone. She walked the underground halls, speaking with the frightened, feeding the hungry, and promising they would not be forgotten. But when she was alone, she allowed her shoulders to fall and her eyes to close. She knew the truth. They were alone. The Zarn did not rush their victory. They enjoyed the slow breaking of their prey. Each week they destroyed another city. Each day they hunted more civilians. They wanted fear to spread not only across Vera but across the galaxy. They wanted everyone to whisper, "Do not resist." The Zarn always win, and the whispers began. Even within Vera's bunkers, people started to lose faith. Parents told their children stories of heroes, but their voices trembled. Elders spoke of honor, but their eyes carried tears. Some began to believe surrender was the only answer. But Commander Selai refused. She stood before her people, her voice strong even when her heart was breaking. "No," she told them, "we will not kneel. If we are to fall, we will fall standing. Our names will not be spoken in shame but in defiance." Her words gave them a little light in the darkness, just enough to take another breath to last another day. But in the corners of their hearts, doubt grew. The distress calls continued, but many asked the same question. Why send them? Who will ever answer? For across the galaxy, no ships moved. No allies came. Vera was a whisper fading into silence, and yet, in that silence, far away, a signal was caught by a world many had ignored. A world dismissed as young, reckless, unworthy of respect. A world others thought too far and too weak to care. But that world remembered something the galaxy had forgotten. Earth had heard, and Earth was listening. Commander Selai stood inside the old command bunker, its walls shaking with every distant strike. Dust fell from the ceiling, coating the table where a holomap flickered weakly. The map was once bright, filled with hopeful blue lights marking their defense fleet. Now it was mostly red dots, enemy ships. The blue dots were almost gone. She stared at them in silence. Her reflection in the glass showed tired eyes, hair streaked with ash and a face lined by sleepless nights. She had not eaten properly in days. Her stomach no longer growled. It had simply grown used to emptiness. What mattered was not her hunger, but the faces of the people who looked to her for answers. The Zarn fleet outside was enormous. Cruisers circled the skies like wolves. Their capital ships, black and angular, loomed in orbit. And every few hours they unleashed fire upon the surface, shattering what little remained of the colony's cities. An officer approached her, his uniform torn, his arm wrapped in dirty bandages. His voice trembled as he gave his report. "Commander, our defenses are gone. Shields are offline. Ammunition is nearly finished. The people, they are asking if we should surrender." Sci did not respond right away. She walked slowly toward the map, placing her hand against the glass. The red lights pulsed like a heartbeat, mocking her. Surrender. The word tasted bitter. She remembered the faces of those already taken by the Zarn. Villages dragged from their homes, lined up in the streets, executed without mercy. The Zarn did not believe in prisoners. Surrender would not save her people. It would only quicken their death. "No," Sci said finally, her voice steady. "We will not beg. We will fight until the end." The officer swallowed hard. He wanted to argue, but he saw the fire in her eyes. He saluted weakly and stepped back. Later, Sci walked the underground corridors. The bunker stretched deep into the earth, filled with families hiding in cramped rooms. The air smelled of damp stone and smoke. Children clung to their parents, their small faces pale with fear. Some cried silently. Others stared blankly at the walls, too exhausted to feel. When Sci passed, the people looked at her, some with hope, some with despair. She nodded to them, trying to smile, though inside her heart was heavy. An elder woman caught her hand. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Commander, please. My granddaughter asks me every night, when will someone come to save us?" "What do I tell her?" Sci's throat tightened. For a moment she could not answer. She looked at the child, a little girl with dirt on her cheeks and wide, frightened eyes. Then Sci knelt, brushing the girl's hair gently. "You tell her this," Sci said softly, "that as long as we are alive, as long as one heart beats in Vera, we are not forgotten. We will hold on, and someday someone will come." The elder woman wept quietly, holding her granddaughter close. Sci stood and forced herself to keep walking. She could not allow her own tears to fall, not here, not in front of them. That night, the Council of Survivors met in the bunker's central chamber. There were only 9 of them left, leaders, elders, officers. They sat around a battered table lit by a single lamp. One of the elders spoke first. His voice was heavy with defeat. "Commander Sci," he said, "we must face the truth. Our fleet is gone. Our weapons are empty. The people cannot fight with bare hands. If we surrender, perhaps the Zarn will spare the children." "Spare?" Sci's voice rose sharply. "You have seen what the Zarn do. They do not spare. They burn, they enslave, they kill." Another elder shook her head. "And if we resist, they will kill us faster. Is it not better to bow and live another day, even as slaves?" Sci slammed her fist against the table. The lamp flickered from the impact. "No," she said, her voice echoing. "We will not kneel. We are not slaves. If we must die, we will die standing. Let the galaxy see that Vera resisted until the last breath." The chamber fell silent. Some lowered their eyes. Others clenched their fists, caught between fear and pride. Sci looked around at them, her face calm now. "I will not order surrender," she said, "but each of you must choose. Stay and fight or step aside. I will not blame you, but I will not bend." When the meeting ended, Sci returned to the surface. She stood alone on the ruined cliffs, the wind carrying the stench of burning cities. Above, the night sky was alive with red lights from Zarn patrol ships. She raised her eyes to the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond this cursed system, their distress calls still traveled. Signals racing through the void, begging for help. Did anyone hear them? Did anyone care? Sci whispered into the night as if the stars themselves were listening. "If no one comes, then remember us. Remember Vera, we will not vanish quietly." And with those words, she prepared her people for the last stand. The communications chamber was the only part of the bunker that still hummed with life. Screens flickered weakly. Antennas above the ground crackled and wires buzzed with faint energy. Day and night, the operators sat at their stations, repeating the same desperate cycle. Record, transmit, wait, and hope. Message coded. Frequency open. Broadcasting now, one of them said, his voice dull from exhaustion. The words were routine, but the weight behind them was heavy. They had been sending distress calls for months. Each signal was like a scream into the void, loud, desperate, but unanswered. The youngest officer there, barely past 20, leaned back in his chair. His uniform was torn and his cheeks were sunken from hunger. He looked at Commander Selai, who had entered quietly, and asked in a trembling voice, "Commander, do you think anyone even hears us?" The chamber went silent. Everyone looked at Selai, waiting for her answer. For a long moment, she said nothing. She walked to the console, staring at the glowing lines of code that represented their latest message. A message of sorrow, of desperation, of hope. Finally, she placed a hand on the young officer's shoulder. "I don't know," she admitted softly, "but we must keep calling. Even if no one listens, even if the void swallows our voices, we must not be silent. Silence means surrender, and we will not surrender." Her words gave the operators enough strength to continue. Fingers moved across the consoles again. The signals were sent. More whispers into the endless dark. Above the planet, the Zarn ships glided like vultures. Their commanders received fragments of the transmissions, but they did not care. They laughed in their cold alien voices. "Let them cry," one Zarn captain said. "No one listens. No one dares to challenge us." And it seemed true. Across the galaxy, Vera's signal reached hundreds of worlds, bouncing through relays and networks. Many ignored it. Some pitied the colony but turned away. Others scoffed, saying, "Why should we waste our fleets on a doomed world?" The Galactic Council heard as well. In their shining chambers, diplomats debated with elegant words, drinking wine while deciding the fate of millions. Some called it a tragedy, but not their responsibility. Others claimed helping would anger the Zarn and risk a larger war. In the end, they agreed on the easiest decision of all, to do nothing. And so Vera's cries were left unanswered. In the underground shelters, despair began to spread. Parents whispered to each other when their children slept. Some spoke of surrender again. Others spoke of trying to escape in small ships, even if it meant dying in the void. The children, too young to understand, asked the same questions each night. Will someone come for us? When will the ships arrive? Why does no one help? Selai heard those questions again and again. Each time she forced herself to answer with hope. But inside she feared the truth, that no one would come, that the galaxy had already abandoned them. One evening, as she sat alone in the command room, she looked at the stars through a cracked window. They twinkled coldly, distant and silent. She clenched her fists until her nails dug into her palms. "Why?" she whispered bitterly. "Why must we be alone?" Her voice broke, though no one was there to hear it. But somewhere far across the black sea of space, her words were not in vain. A small blue planet, orbiting a yellow sun, received the signal. The transmission was faint, broken by interference, but it carried enough. On Earth, technicians listened to the desperate voice of Vera. They heard the trembling pleas, the cries of children, the warnings of destruction. At first they thought it was just another faraway tragedy, like so many others in the galaxy. But the message spread quickly, not just through governments, but through the people. And humanity reacted in a way no one expected. In cities across Earth, people gathered around screens watching the recordings of Vera's last messages. Families cried. Soldiers clenched their jaws. Workers, students, and even children asked the same thing. Why is no one helping them? Governments debated, arguing about politics and risks. Generals spoke of strategy, of how costly such a war would be. But the people, the billions who made up humanity, did not stay silent. On networks and broadcasts, voices rose together. If no one else will go, then we must. For humans remembered something that others had forgotten. They remembered their own history, filled with wars and struggles where survival had always meant fighting against impossible odds. They remembered what it felt like to be abandoned, to be underestimated, to be called weak. And above all, they remembered what it meant to stand for someone who could not stand alone. Back on Vera, Selai sat with her people, listening to the faint hum of the transmitter sending yet another message into the dark. She tried to imagine what lay beyond the stars. She tried to imagine someone listening. She did not know that light years away, Earth was already moving. She did not know that for the first time in history, every human fleet was preparing to gather, and she did not know that the silence across the stars was about to be broken by the roar of humanity's might. In the grand halls of the Galactic Council, the name of Earth was rarely spoken with respect. To the elder civilizations, humans were newcomers, young, reckless, and loud. They had risen quickly, expanding into the stars with determination, but the Council saw them as children playing with dangerous toys. Humans were called many things: barbarians with ships, warriors without wisdom, a flame that would burn itself out. Most of the galaxy believed it, but what the galaxy forgot was that humans had something rare, something no empire, no council, no dominion could take away. They remembered. On Earth, the distress call from Vera spread like wildfire. What began as a faint signal, broken and weak, grew into a cry that every human heart could hear. News screens replayed the words of frightened colonists. Images of burning cities filled the networks. Children on Earth asked their parents why no one was helping. Parents had no answer except the anger burning in their own eyes. Governments hesitated. They argued behind closed doors, weighing risks and costs. To send fleets across such distance was dangerous. To face the Zarn Empire was suicide. They could stay safe, remain silent, and let Vera fall. But humanity had never been a species that stayed silent when cries for help echoed. Protests filled the streets of Earth's cities. People marched carrying banners with words that reached every corner of the planet. If no one will go, then we must. Earth does not abandon the lost. Humanity stands with Vera. The voices grew too loud to ignore. Politicians who resisted were drowned out by the will of billions. Soldiers volunteered in waves. Engineers worked day and night to ready the fleets. Families said goodbye to sons and daughters who might never return, but they sent them with pride in their eyes. For the people of Earth remembered something vital. Once, in their own history, they had been weak, colonized, abandoned, and mocked. They had fought for survival against impossible odds, and in every struggle, they had learned that unity and courage could turn weakness into strength. In orbit above Earth, shipyards came alive with fire and light. Massive carriers, scarred from old battles, were refitted and fueled. Sleek destroyers lined up in formation. Battleships, ancient yet unbroken, powered their cores once more. The admirals looked upon the growing armada. Never before had so many human fleets gathered as one. Nations that had once quarreled now stood shoulder to shoulder. Flags that had flown in opposition now flew together under one banner: humanity. In a command briefing, Admiral Kieran spoke words that would echo in history. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with fire. The Council will not go. The empires will not move. They think Vera is lost. They think no one will come. They think humanity is afraid. But they are wrong. He paused, looking at every captain, every soldier, every engineer who had gathered. Earth does not leave people behind. Not now, not ever. We are the answer to Vera's call, and we will show the galaxy what it means to be human. The chamber erupted in thunderous agreement. As the fleets prepared, messages were sent across human space. Families recorded final words for their loved ones. Children painted stars on the sides of supply crates. Entire cities stopped to watch the armada rise from Earth's surface, their engines blazing like suns. A miner in the asteroid belt sent his entire life savings to help fund the mission. A farmer on Mars sent food shipments to feed the crews. A schoolteacher gathered her students to write letters of hope, which were stored in the ship's archives to remind every soldier why they fought. It was not just an army. It was a people. Meanwhile, in the council chambers, alien diplomats scoffed. In a small village, a cat named Whiskers discovered a magic fish in a pond. The fish promised 3 wishes in exchange for its freedom. Whiskers wished for endless fish, a cozy bed, and a bell that rang softly. The fish granted all 3 wishes and swam away, leaving Whiskers content and purring in the sun. The humans are fools, one elder hissed. They will be crushed by the Zarn. They have no strategy, another sneered. Only fire and passion. They are still children. But beneath their arrogance, some felt unease. They had seen the recordings of human history. They had seen how humans fought when cornered, how they endured when broken, how they rose when others fell. And deep in their hearts a question formed, though none dared to speak it aloud. What if the humans succeed? Back on Vera, the distress signals continued. Each day, the operators repeated the same ritual, though their voices grew weaker. In the underground shelters, the colonists had nearly given up hope. Commander Salai told her people to endure, but she knew the truth. No help was coming. Yet far away across the endless black of space, an armada was already on its way. An armada born not of politics, not of power, but of memory, unity, and rage. Humanity was coming, and the stars would soon tremble. The world of Vera was dying. Ash clouds hung in the air, turning daylight into gray twilight. Cities were no longer cities, only skeletons of stone and steel. Rivers ran black with ash, and the once green fields were nothing but scorched earth. The people had retreated deeper underground, their food almost gone, their spirits almost broken. Above them, the Zarn fleet prepared for its final act. The massive warships circled like predators ready to strike the killing blow. In the bunkers, word spread quickly. The Zarn had begun charging their orbital cannons. Everyone knew what it meant. This was the end. Commander Salai stood in the main chamber, her hand resting on the table where the holomap flickered faintly. There were no blue lights left, only the endless red glow of enemy ships. Around her, the officers waited in silence, their faces pale, their eyes hollow. She knew what they were thinking. She knew what she herself feared to admit. It was over. One of the younger officers whispered, barely audible. Perhaps. It will be quick. Salai closed her eyes. Quick, yes, but not painless. She thought of the children in the bunkers, their soft voices asking questions she could not answer. She thought of the families who had believed in her, and for the first time, she felt her own strength falter. She almost wished for silence, for the guns to fall, for the suffering to end. Then the alarms began to scream. Every console in the chamber lit up with warnings. Sensors blared, detecting something enormous at the edge of the system. Officers scrambled to read the data, their voices filled with disbelief. New contacts, one shouted. Hundreds of them, another cried out, his hands shaking over the keys. Thousands. Salai's eyes snapped open. She stepped forward, staring at the screens. The holomap shifted, and suddenly the black void of space was filled with blue lights, so many that the red dots of the Zarn fleet looked small in comparison. For a moment, no one spoke. No one breathed. Then, through the static of the comms, a new signal broke through. Strong, clear, and human. On the surface of Vera, the people felt it too. Those brave enough to step outside looked to the sky. At first, they saw only darkness. Then streaks of light appeared. Hundreds, then thousands, falling from the heavens like shooting stars. They were not fire. They were ships, massive carriers bristling with weapons, sleek destroyers, engines blazing. Colossal battleships, their hulls shining with human steel. The sky filled with them, stretching across the horizon until the stars themselves were hidden. For the first time in months, the people of Vera looked upward not with fear, but with awe. Their whispers spread like wildfire. They came. Someone came. Humans. It's the humans! In the command chamber, tears welled in Salai's eyes. She gripped the edge of the table, her heart pounding in her chest. Who are they? One officer asked, his voice shaking. Salai smiled through her tears. Earth, she whispered. It's Earth. The comms filled with human voices, steady and strong. This is the United Human Fleet, the message declared. To the people of Vera, hold on. You are not alone. We are here. The officers stared at one another in disbelief. Some wept openly. Others laughed for the first time in months. The sound raw and broken, but filled with hope. Salai closed her eyes, letting the words wash over her like light after endless night. Above, the Zarn reacted with fury. Their commanders had not expected this. Humans were supposed to be weak, disorganized, too fractured to send aid. Yet here was an armada greater than anything the Zarn had ever seen. The enemy scrambled to form battle lines. Cruisers turned, shields powering up. Carriers released swarms of fighters. The Zarn flagship sent out a transmission of rage, promising to crush this new force. But the humans were ready. The first wave of human fighters roared through space, breaking into tight formations. Carriers unleashed coordinated salvos. Destroyers dove forward, weaving between the enemy lines with impossible precision. Battleships fired broadside volleys that shook the heavens. And for the first time, the Zarn knew fear. On the ground, the colonists emerged from their bunkers. staring at the night sky as it erupted into fire and light. Explosions flashed like stars being born. The rumble of distant thunder rolled across the planet, the echo of war in the void above. Children pointed upward, eyes wide. Parents held them close, whispering words they had not dared to speak. "We are saved." Sci stood on the cliffs above the ruined city. Her people gathered around her, their faces illuminated by the glow of battle in the sky. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "They came. Against all odds, they came." The crowd began to cheer, their voices rising into the night. It was not the cheer of victory yet, but of hope reborn. Far above, Admiral Kieran stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship. His eyes burned with determination as he watched the Zarn fleet shatter under the first strikes. "Transmit to all ships," he ordered. "Our mission is clear. Farah must not fall. Humanity stands with them. Today we show the galaxy who we are." His words carried across the Armada, filling every soldier with fire, and as the battle raged on, one truth spread from Vera to the farthest corners of the stars. No longer would the galaxy say, "No one will come," because Earth had answered. The void above Vera became a storm of fire. Human ships clashed with the Zarn fleet, each strike lighting up the sky. Plasma bursts tore through the darkness, missiles left blazing trails, and railguns fired streaks of light that shook the heavens. It was not a battle of a few ships. It was a war of giants fought above a dying world that still dared to hope. From the ground, the people of Vera saw their sky burning. But instead of despair, their hearts now filled with courage. They were no longer alone. The humans had come, and their ships fought with a fury that made the impossible seem real. Admiral Kieran stood at the front of Earth's flagship, Valiant Dawn. The massive warship was like a mountain of steel, bristling with guns and shields. Around it, smaller vessels darted like hawks, forming walls of fire. His officers reported nonstop. Enemy cruisers breaking through the east flank. Carriers releasing second wave of drones. Shields at 70% holding steady. Kieran raised his hand, calm but fierce. "Redirect the ironclads to the east." "Hold that line. We do not break. Not today." His voice was steady, but inside he knew the truth. The Zarn still outnumbered them. The fight would not be easy. Humanity's strength was not just in numbers, it was in will. And that will had to shine now brighter than ever. On the ground, Commander Sci stood with her people, watching in awe. Every explosion painted the night sky with fire. Her heart trembled with every strike, every loss, every victory. She knew she was seeing history unfold. Beside her, a little boy whispered, "The humans. Will they win?" She bent down, holding his hand tightly. "Yes," she said, her voice shaking but strong. "They came for us. They will not leave us." For the first time, she truly believed it. Above, the Zarn pressed harder. Their flagship, a monstrous vessel the size of a small moon, entered the battle. Its cannons glowed with terrible light, each shot capable of tearing entire cruisers apart. When it fired, a human destroyer vanished in a single flash. The Zarn commander roared over comms, his voice filled with hatred. "You cannot stop us. Humanity will burn as Vera burns." Kieran's jaw tightened. He gave one simple order. "All ships target their flagship. Bring it down." The humans obeyed without hesitation. 1,000 guns turned as one. Missiles streaked through the void. Fighters swarmed like angry hornets, striking at weak points in the enemy shields. The flagship shook under the rain of fire, but it did not fall. Not yet. The Zarn responded with brutal force. Dozens of human ships were struck, their hulls torn apart. Some went silent forever. Others, even in their last moments, rammed into enemy cruisers, sacrificing themselves to take the monsters down. Every loss cut deep. On the ground, the colonists cried when they saw ships explode. But then when human ships struck back twice as hard, they cheered louder, their voices echoing across ruined cities. Sci raised her hand to the crowd. "Do not weep for them. Honor them. They fight for us. They fight for all of us." Her words gave strength to tired hearts. Even as the world shook, the people stood taller. Inside the Valiant Dawn, alarms blared. The crew worked with sweat on their brows and blood on their hands. Sparks flew as enemy fire struck the shields again and again. "Admiral," cried one officer, "we cannot hold if that flagship keeps firing." Kieran's eyes narrowed. He looked at the hollow map, at the burning world below, at the thousands of ships still holding formation. He knew what had to be done. He opened the comms to the entire fleet. His voice carried to every ship, every soldier, every fighter pilot. Listen to me. The galaxy thinks humanity is weak. They think we are cowards. But today, they will learn what it means when Earth stands together. Today we show them that we do not run. We do not hide. We fight. Cheers erupted across the fleet. Even the weary found new strength. Kieran raised his hand. All ships, charge with me! The human armada surged forward as one. The battleships formed the spearhead, their guns blazing. Carriers released every last fighter. Destroyers and frigates wove between enemy fire, striking at weak points. It was a wall of fire, a wave of steel crashing directly into the Zarn flagship. The enemy ship roared, its shields flaring. But this time the humans did not stop. Shot after shot hammered into it. Missiles exploded against its armor. Fighters tore at its engines. Slowly, piece by piece, the monster began to crack. On the ground, the people of Vera screamed in joy. Their voices rose higher with every strike. Break it! Break it! Salai's heart pounded. She whispered, yes. Yes, finish it! At last, the human flagship moved in close, leading the final strike. Kieran stood tall, his eyes locked on the enemy. Fire everything. The valiant Dawn unleashed its entire arsenal. Railguns thundered. Plasma cannons fired in unison. Torpedoes streaked forward. The blast lit up the sky like a new sun. The Zarn flagship groaned, split open, and finally exploded in a storm of fire. For a moment, there was silence. The Zarn fleet faltered, their commanders stunned. Then, as if the universe itself had given the signal, the human ships pressed the attack harder, tearing through enemy lines with unstoppable fury. And the people of Vera fell to their knees, their tears shining in the firelight above. They were witnessing a miracle. The destruction of the Zarn flagship was like a thunderclap across the stars. For a heartbeat, all of space seemed to pause. The massive ship, once a symbol of terror, broke apart in a storm of fire and shattered metal. The explosion burned so bright that even on the surface of Vera, the people shielded their eyes. Then came the sound, not heard through air, but through the comms, the cheers of humanity's fleet. Voices from every ship rose in victory, defiance, and unity. The tide was turning. Admiral Kieran gripped the rail of his command deck, his face lit by the firestorm outside. Around him, officers shouted updates. The Zarn fleet is in disarray. They're falling back, splitting into fragments. Our fighters are pressing them hard. Kieran nodded once, his jaw tight. Do not let them escape. Today the galaxy learns the cost of attacking the innocent. His words carried across the fleet, and the human armada pressed forward with renewed fury. The Zarn fought desperately, but without their flagship, their unity faltered. Smaller ships tried to regroup, but human destroyers cut through them with precision. Battleships fired broadsides that turned enemy cruisers into blazing wrecks. Carriers launched wave after wave of fighters, swarming like steel locusts across the battlefield. On the surface of Vera, the people watched the sky and began to believe the unthinkable, that they might live to see tomorrow. Salai stood among them, her fists clenched at her sides. Tears blurred her vision as explosions flared high above. She whispered to herself, they are driving them back. They are truly winning. But the Zarn were not finished yet. From the far side of the system, a reserve fleet appeared, hundreds of reinforcements pouring in. The sensors screamed warnings across the human ships. Admiral, a voice cried. More enemy ships incoming, size of a full fleet. On Vera, hope wavered. People gasped, clutching each other as the new swarm of red dots appeared on holomaps. The enemy was not giving up. They were bringing everything. Salai's heart sank. Could even Earth's armada withstand this second wave? Admiral Kieran stood still, his eyes locked on the tactical display. For a moment, silence held the bridge. Then he spoke, calm but fierce. So be it. He turned to his officers. Signal every ship. We hold this system. Not one of them passes us. Not one. The comms lit up with affirmations. Soldiers, pilots, and captains across the fleet answered in unison. For Earth. For Vera. For the innocent. The human armada braced itself as the second wave of Zarn ships thundered into range. The battle reignited with even greater fury. Human cruisers and destroyers darted forward, clashing head-on with the reinforcements. Explosions shook the black sky as ships collided, as missiles and beams filled the void with light. Entire squadrons vanished in fire, but others pressed through, striking back harder. The valiant Dawn shook under the assault, its shields screaming. But Admiral Kieran never faltered. He barked orders, moving ships like pieces on a deadly chessboard. Bring the ironclads to the front line. Redirect fire to their carriers. Protect our flanks at all costs. The humans fought with impossible determination. They had no choice. Behind them lay Vera, battered and wounded but alive. They would not let the monsters touch it again. On the ground, Sci and the colonists watched in silence. The sky burned brighter than ever, filled with streaks of light and falling wreckage. Every explosion was both a prayer and a cry. Children huddled in their mothers' arms. Old men clenched their fists, whispering for strength. The whole world seemed to hold its breath. Sci raised her voice loud enough for all around her. Do not fear the storm. Look at them.
Look at how they fight.
Humanity does not abandon us. They are our shield. Her words spread like fire. The crowd lifted their heads, shouting back with voices full of hope. In orbit, the humans found themselves surrounded. The Zarn reinforcements poured fire from all sides, pressing hard. Yet still, the humans held their lines. One by one, stories of bravery unfolded. A human frigate, burning and broken, rammed directly into an enemy cruiser, destroying both. A squadron of fighters, low on fuel, still dove into the enemy swarm, refusing to retreat. Even as ships fell, their sacrifice bought precious moments for others to strike harder. Kieran's voice rang through comms. Every second you hold is a life saved below. Fight with everything. Make them remember this day. And they did. At last, the turning point came. Human battleships broke through the enemy's flank, unleashing devastating volleys into the heart of the reinforcements. Carriers sent out fresh squadrons, overwhelming the Zarn with sheer coordination. The humans fought as one body, one will unbreakable. The Zarn began to falter again. Their formations broke, their ships scattering under the relentless assault. The reinforcements that had entered the battle with fury were now struggling to survive. On Vera, the people saw it. Their cheers rose like thunder. They're winning. They're winning again. Sci fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She whispered, Bless the humans. Bless them all. The battlefield was still chaos, but the tide had shifted. Humanity's armada, though bloodied and scarred, stood strong. Admiral Kieran gazed at the burning wrecks drifting through the void. His voice, quiet but firm, carried across the fleet. Hold the line. The dawn is coming. And across the surface of Vera, hope spread like a flame that no darkness could smother. The battle raged for hours. Above Vera, the stars themselves seemed drowned in fire. Human and Zarn ships tangled in a storm of light, explosions blooming like dying suns. Hulls tore, shields failed, engines flared out, but still the humans fought, never breaking, never yielding. On the surface, the people huddled together, their eyes fixed on the burning heavens. They did not pray for survival anymore. They prayed for victory, and far above them, humanity was making that prayer real. Admiral Kieran stood on the bridge of the Valiant Dawn. His uniform was torn, blood marked his brow, but his voice never faltered. Status, he demanded, shields at 40%. 17 ships lost. Enemy forces. Collapsing, Admiral. They're breaking. A silence fell over the bridge. The words hung in the air like a spark before a fire. Breaking. The Zarn, who had crushed world after world, who had thought no one would dare oppose them, were breaking. On the surface of Vera, Commander Sci stood among her people on the cliffs. The sky blazed with streaks of light as human ships drove the Zarn back. For a long moment she could not breathe. Then her voice broke free, trembling but strong. They're winning, she whispered. The people echoed her words, first in whispers, then in cries, then in thunderous shouts that rolled through the ruined cities. They're winning. They're winning. For the first time in so long, hope was no longer fragile. It was alive. But the Zarn were cornered beasts. With their fleet in ruins, their commander sent one last desperate order. The surviving ships turned toward Vera, engines blazing, weapons charging. They would not claim victory. But they would claim vengeance. They would burn the planet even if they lost. Sensors screamed warnings. Officers shouted in panic, they're targeting the planet. Orbital cannons charging. Sci's heart froze. Around her, the colonists cried out, clutching each other. After all this, after so much sacrifice, were they still doomed? On the bridge of the Valiant Dawn, Kieran heard the same reports. His jaw tightened like stone. No, he said. They will not touch this world. Not while humanity still breathes. He turned to his crew. His voice was steady, but it carried the weight of every sacrifice made. Signal the fleet. This is our final stand. Protect Vera at all costs. The comms lit up with voices answering as one. For Earth. For Vera. For humanity. The human armada surged forward, throwing themselves between the Zarn and the planet below. The clash was apocalyptic. Human ships intercepted every shot meant for Vera. Some were torn apart in fire, their wrecks falling like meteors. Others rammed directly into enemy cruisers, tearing both to pieces. Fighters weaved through a storm of plasma, striking down bombers before they could fire. The people on the ground watched in awe and terror as ships burned for them. Each sacrifice carved itself into their hearts forever. Selai whispered through her tears, "They're dying for us. They're giving everything." At the center of the storm, the valiant Dawn faced the largest surviving Zarn warship. The enemy vessel loomed like a beast of darkness, its cannons glowing with the power to crack a planet's crust. Kieran stood tall. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the fleet. Humanity does not run. Humanity does not hide. Today we are the shield. Today we are the sword. He raised his hand. All guns, fire. The valiant Dawn unleashed its fury. Every cannon, every railgun, every torpedo screamed into the void. The Zarn ship answered in kind, its beams tearing into human shields. For minutes that felt like eternity, the two giants exchanged fire, each refusing to fall. Then, with a final earth-shaking blast, the Zarn warship split apart and exploded, fragments scattering like ashes across the stars. The humans had won. Silence fell across the battlefield. The surviving Zarn ships, leaderless and broken, fled into the void. Humanity's armada, bloodied but unbroken, held formation above Vera. The sky was clear. On the ground, the colonists erupted into cries of joy. Children laughed through their tears. Parents embraced one another. Strangers clung together as if family. Their voices rose in one cry that shook the night. Humanity came. Humanity saved us. Selai raised her hands, her voice breaking as she shouted into the roaring crowd. Remember this day. The day Earth came for us, the day the galaxy learned that no one is ever truly alone. On the bridge of the valiant Dawn, Admiral Kieran leaned against the rail, his body heavy with exhaustion. Around him, his crew cheered, wept, and embraced. He looked out at the burning wrecks drifting in silence, then down at the battered world below. His lips curved into a tired smile. "We came for them," he whispered. "And we will come again for any who need us. That is humanity's promise." And so across the galaxy stories spread. Stories of a world abandoned, saved by strangers who became brothers. Stories of Earth's armada, rising from the blue planet no one had expected, to fight like lions among the stars. The Zarn learned fear that day. The colonists of Vera learned hope, and the galaxy learned the truth. They thought no one would come. But then Earth came, and Earth's mightiest armada lit the night like dawn, breaking through endless dark.